What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the Paranormies presents the Ahnenerbe Hour. I am Johnny Monoxide, and tonight I'm joined by Scott Taylor and Adam Haidt. What's up, guys?
Hey, how's it going?
What's up?
Not much. It is, what is it, May something now? It's almost summertime.
I think.
May 11th.
It's May 11th. Yeah, that's when we record. Yeah, tomorrow will be the 12th when we release this. Man, it's flying by. What do we got going on? We are just going to jump right into it. We are available at the Paranormies presents the Ahnenerbe Hour on Facebook. The Paranormies at the Paranormies on Twitter. Paranormies present at gmail.com, and you can donate to us at paranormiespresent@gmail.com as well. Didn't get any donations this week, but thanks to donations we have gotten, all of our Paranormies got new mics and stuff. So thank you, Gwen.
And they're
we really appreciate it.
They're awesome. I love them.
Oh, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, everybody sounds so much better. Scott, turn yours up just a
smooth
tiny
voice.
bit.
Turn the voice up.
Oh, you're right there. That's perfect. There you go. Yeah, dude, you guys,
okay.
Everybody sounds so much better, man. Bradshaw recorded a new creepypasta using the new mic, and Death will be joining us shortly, not tonight, but soon enough with his new mic, and everybody sounds great, man. Hopefully the TRS mic curse doesn't affect us. I think we might have handled that already. And I didn't get a new mic. I already had a mic. I didn't want to get a new mic. I like my mic. I just got some new stuff for mine. But everybody sounds great now, and it's all thanks to you, Goyam. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I needed a new microphone anyway, so this is I really do appreciate it. So
Yeah,
thank
now-
you for everyone that donated.
Yeah, guys. We
Just
guys,
in time
This
for
program is
thankful react.
brought to you by viewers like you. Thank
right.
you.
That's right.
Well, just in time for the thankful react from Facebook. So,
That's right. The thankful react
Really
that we
ties
at
in with
TRS are turning into a Nazi hate symbol. So
right.
they can't have anything.
No
They can't have anything. Like, we turned Trash Dove into a hate meme. We turned Milk into a hate meme.
Well, it's great because I already like all of these things anyway. Like, I thought Trash Dove was already funny, and I think the thankful symbol's already funny. So this just makes it 10 times better. I really like it.
It's great. Yeah. Pepe the Frog. They had to kill Pepe, but you can't kill Pepe.
I think Pepe was already dead. I was talking to someone on Twitter about this earlier today. We were talking about chaos magic and stuff as far as future show topics go, and sigils, and they were saying how they think Pepe's like a super sigil or a meta sigil, and I kind of agree with that. And I think if Pepe is some sort of meta sigil, I think he kind of blew his load and died when Trump got elected. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting.
If you notice, he kind of fell off right after the election. At least
Yeah,
that's how it seems
we
to
didn't
me.
need him anymore. We didn't need him.
Right. The new Pepe is sterner memes, by the way. So if you want to convey the same smug feeling,
Sterner
just
memes.
post
That
a
face.
picture.
Holy cow. Yeah.
yeah, it's the new
Oh,
Pepe.
man. But yes, back
We can see
to
if it has as much utility in the future.
thanking everybody. Yes, thank you, Goys and Goyam in general. We appreciate you all. We got a couple emails this week. Let's go check out the emails. Okay, this one's way too long.
That's fine. We'll just read it at the end if we were short on time or something.
Yeah, well, this one's about last week's episode. No, I kind of want to read it now. It's about Dumbs and Aliens from last week. He said it was a great show. His father was really into the Xerox copy conspiracy UFO culture of the 90s. He met with people like William Cooper from Behold a Pale Horse, Phil Schneider, Jordan Maxwell, and Norio Hayakawa. I'm just going to skim through this. In regards to Dolce, Richard Doty is still around pushing UFO garbage. He's involved in disclosure of the U.S. government alien exchange called Project Serpo. You can check that out at serpo.org. Benowitz, he talks about Benowitz for a second. It's a really long email. But he says the guy you really want to think about is Norio Hayakawa is the keystone to all of this. He has known all the key players and all the conspiracy UFOs for decades, and has even led expeditions of people to the black mailbox outside of Area 51 where they flew that UFO called Old Faithful. He was part of a TV crew from Japan who documented Area 51 back in the 80s. There was a really big UFO craze in Japan apparently too. He helped produce a special Nihon TV about Dulce, of which only bits and pieces still exist. There are small clips from the special, mostly recreations of the Hansen drawings of vats, aliens in jars, and stuff like that. He still hosts the Dulce conference in Dulce, New Mexico every year, but he believes the cattle mutilations are part of the military monitoring radioactive isotopes in the region due to the nuclear weapons testing on nearby Archuleta Mesa. He does not believe that the Dulce base as it exists in legend. He says, I know him, and he has lived in America for the past 30 years, working as a funeral home director in California before retiring and going out to New Mexico. He's written some very good critiques of the major players of the Dulce story on his blog. Dulce itself is still a mystery to this day. There's something going on there. It might be military testing, since it technically isn't U.S. soil. Interesting. And
is it not U.S. soil because it's on a reservation, maybe?
Yes. That's why, yeah. Okay. Because it's on a reservation, yeah.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Yeah. It really is, actually.
It seems like the smart way to do it.
Mm-hmm. If you're going to do... Yeah, exactly. Well, that's like... Back when we were... a while back, we were talking about something... the giants with the Nephilim with the burial grounds, how they're always on Indian reservations, and there's nothing anybody can do because those are not, on actual American soil. So there's no way you can go, do.
And the rent is cheap. It's just a case of Jack Daniels every month.
Case of Jack Daniels and an 8-ball of meth. So, sorry to any of our Native American listeners. Not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
Not sorry. All right, one more. King of the Shill writes, Dear Paranormies, I know you were joking when you said you were going to do an episode on The Shining, but I think a general Stanley Kubrick episode... Oh, no. Excuse me. He said, I think a general Stanley Kubrick... I forgot the break. Episode would be pretty cool. I often disregard conspiracy theories, but the theories surrounding Kubrick, his films, and his death fascinate me. It's pretty clear that he knew some shit and was trying to subtly red pill his audience with highly esoteric symbolism. He was such a meticulous autiste as a filmmaker that I doubt any of the weird shit in his movies is coincidental. As you know, we don't believe in coincidences here on the Paranormies. On The Shining, Room 237 is a pretty popular documentary, and there's a YouTube link. There's a couple of videos on The Shining from a guy named Rob Ager, A-G-E-R, on The Shining and A Clockwork Orange. Says there's a couple of other mind fucks I've noticed in Kubrick movies that haven't seen pointed out in any videos or blogs. And again, he links these videos. King of the Shill. All right. Well, I think, we already know that Stanley Kubrick did 9/11. Stanley Kubrick did the moon landing.
He faked the moon landing.
Right.
9/11 was done in a studio.
Mm-hmm.
Totally.
By Jim Fetzer.
Jim
Fetzer did 9/11.
Jim Fetzer did 9/11? Stop.
If he wants to clear up the rumor, I suggest he comes on the show.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. Oh, man.
Ludicrous.
Ludicrous. So tonight on the show,
we gotta make fun.
Yeah, he doesn't even. I swear he has to know. Like, right? I mean, if you're into conspiracies and you haven't heard of the Paranormies yet, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your life.
It's only the 5th most popular alt-right paranormal podcast on the TRS network. Like,
wait a second, 5th?
You wouldn't have heard of us.
Who's 3rd?
Yeah, there's 4 other conspiracy shows. You haven't heard of them?
On the TRS network? No.
No, yeah, there's a bunch. They talk about Bigfoot and stuff. We're only in 5th place. Sorry. We'll get there.
I want to throw in a Sven not so much meme, but I don't know if I can. So. I think I just did. Anyways, so tonight we've got a little bit of a we have an extra special topic. You guys like to hear us talk about different personalities in the paranormal and the occult and whatever. We talk about a certain author who's written a lot of books on the elder gods and a lot of weird shit. Mr. HP Lovecraft. You may recognize one of his stories called The Call of Cthulhu. What do you guys think?
I
like it.
Excited.
What's that?
I'm excited. I'm ready to do it.
You're excited? All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, let me shut this off before we get fucking monetized or sued by Lars Ulrich. Either one.
Yeah, he would personally.
Lars definitely listens to
Next thing you know, it's just like, excuse me, you cannot use my music. Dude, I literally live like 40 minutes away from the guy, so like he could possibly show up soon. Let's get this out of the way before.
He would literally deliver the subpoena himself.
Like he hasn't sued a 10-year-old girl. Like, come on, implying. So,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So HP Lovecraft. This is a topic that came from our listeners. They wanted to hear it, so let's talk about him. Who wants to go first?
Well, I got some notes on kind of the general biography of him, and I feel like it's a good place to start off, get a little background of, what kind of person he was, where he came from, what kind of influences that could have on him. So he was born in Providence, Rhode Island, on August 20th, 1890, so right around the turn of the century. His father was a traveling salesman. His name was Winfield Lovecraft. He worked for a silversmith company, so the Judaism starts early. In 1890. Yeah. But his dad had like a nervous breakdown in 1893 because he was a traveling salesman, right? And they were in Chicago, and he had a nervous breakdown at the hotel, and he got admitted to a psychiatric hospital. And he stayed there for 5 years, and he died there. And H.P. Lovecraft was never able to go visit him. They told him that he was like paralyzed and could not like speak. He was comatose most of the time, which it was actually a lie. He wasn't, but I guess they just didn't want Lovecraft to see him in that state. Little Howard Phillips. That's his full name. That's what the HP stands for. And they suspect that he probably had syphilis. His father had syphilis, and that they didn't know how to treat it back then. So it would cause like damage to the brain and all sorts of different complications. So from 1898 on, H.P. Lovecraft and his mom moved to go live with his grandfather, whose name was Whipple Van Buren Phillips.
That's a great name.
That is Whipple. It reminds me. Don't we know a guy named Wig Buttles?
Yeah, he's a writer for the Starboard stuff. He's really good. He's the lead time travel researcher there.
Right. It just kind of that name reminded me of Wig.
No, he doesn't time travel. He researches.
I'm pretty sure he does.
He's not gay.
Sexual. I'm pretty sure he's gay.
Definitely not.
So, okay. So Whipple Van Buren Phillips. So that's a interesting name. Anyways,
but so Whipple, Grandpappy Whipple, was a very successful businessman, and so they lived in this really opulent house out in Rhode Island. Very, very cushy life. Really a great thing to grow up in. And little Howard Phillips took great advantage of that. He was very, very smart. He was very capable even as a kid. He could recite poetry when he was 2 years old, which, a lot of 2-year-olds can't even like ask a simple question, but wow. He was reciting poetry. He was reading when he was 3 years old. I can barely read now, and I'm almost 23. And he was writing stuff at 6 or 7 years old. So extremely talented and very literate. He originally really got into literature by reading Arabian Nights, and he even came up with his own little pseudonym character named Abdul al-Hazred. And it's pretty cool because he uses that name a few times in his other stories. Like, I'm pretty sure at the Mountains of Madness.
I was going to say, that's the guy that wrote the Necronomicon in his fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So this crazy, swarthy necromancer warlock guy or whatever. So he's really into this, he's kind of an Arabu, really like this Arab stuff. And I mean, to be fair, the really high caste, Arabs and the Iranian Muslims, like they had some cool stuff they wrote. They had a neat aesthetic.
The stories about the
hybrid
jinn
ones
and all that, yeah.
But eventually he moved on to superior literature. He found some like children's translations of the Odyssey and what's that other one that always goes, or the Iliad?
The Iliad.
Yeah.
The Iliad and the Odyssey. Yeah, those always go together.
Yeah, and he really loved that. And he even wrote a poem with like a complex rhyme scheme paraphrasing the tale of Ulysses. And even better, it had 88 lines.
Huh. Starting off as a kid.
Yeah.
Interestingly, because
88 lines.
Well, 88 lines, but he was only probably, at this age, it was only probably like 1912, something like that. No, not
yeah, he was born in 1890, so it wasn't even the turn of the century probably. He probably wrote it in like 97, 98.
Wow, he had like a pre-88 thing going on. Interesting.
Yeah, so he did that. He was just like voracious reader. Now the problem is he was kind of a nerd, and when he was in school, he had a lot of like psychological, like psychosomatic stress symptoms, and he would get sick, and it was probably like a stress response. And he really didn't like going to school very much when he was very young. So he'd miss school all the time, but he would just hang out at home reading like everything he could get his hands on. And he even found like some old science journals, and he started getting fascinated with chemistry. He found an astronomy journal and was reading all about the stars, which, space and the sort of unknown, these vast like voids of, nobody really knows what's out there, was a really big influence on his writing later, especially the stuff in the dream cycle.
It's
but
really
I'll talk about that later.
to see how you can like already kind of see his stuff starting to form even as a kid.
Mm-hmm. He's very creative. He even made his own journals. There's this thing called a hectograph, which is apparently some kind of copying gelatin, where like you get a reverse of what you want to print, and it's like on ink on the paper, and you put it on this gelatin. I guess it's like silly putty, and it'll like lift it up, and then so he could like
kind of, yeah.
It's really
they call it a jellygraph. So they're
okay.
Technically the company who started it was a company called J.R. Holcomb and Company. They're called transfer tablets, and it's kind of like like you said, it's like a I don't know if anybody out there knows or doesn't know what silly putty is. You can take silly putty and flatten it out and put it on like a comic book, or it has to be something with ink on like a newspaper where it's not actually like tightly connected to the paper, and you can pull it off. So it's kind of the same thing, or actually it kind of reminds me a little bit of, do you guys remember the carbon copy stuff? Where it's kind of like...
that might be a little before my time.
Come on. I'm not that old. But,
no, I'm being serious. Maybe if I saw it, I would know.
You mean like on a checkbook?
Kind of. You write on one side. You write on one side of this purple... Okay, so the hectograph. Yeah, you write on one side.
A piece of... Yeah. No, I know what you're talking about. It's
and
like
it produces an image on the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, I gotcha.
Except this is used with gelatin and some kind of spirits or whatever. So
Like when you get
made
like
me
a
feel
traffic
really
ticket,
old
like
for a second. Thanks.
Well, I didn't know what you were talking about. You mean like when you get like a traffic ticket and it's got like the
Or your
yellow
checkbook.
paper?
Your checkbook has the
paper.
same. Yeah, exactly. Yellow paper, the pink copy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the yellow copy. Like, well, you're in the military. The yellow copy's for this. The magenta copy goes here. The purple copy goes here.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. But anyways, yeah, you had to be very careful with this because it was like really sensitive, but it was very. You could do highly detailed stuff with this.
Yeah, and he used that technology. He would make his own little journals of like science articles that he found, and like astronomy or chemistry or whatever, and he would like hand it out to his friends. So he was like very creative, very industrious at an extremely young age.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a little magazine he called the Scientific Gazette that he made his little hectograph magazine that he gave out in high school. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually in high school he came out of his shell a little bit. I guess he got over his whatever psychological issues he had, at least temporarily, and he made a lot more friends in high school. And that's when he started writing for like public consumption. He actually got published in the Providence Sunday Journal, some science articles he wrote. And he wrote for a little rural magazine called Pawtuxet Valley Gleaner. He did like monthly publications. He mostly wrote essays and that sort of thing. It's kind of fascinating, actually, because he was such a prolific writer, and there's only ever essays and short stories.
Yeah, wasn't he also a journalist for a while?
Oh, I'm sure he was. I mean, if he can get paid to write.
I think it was like 1914, I read. He worked for the Associated Press as a journalist. So,
well,
he had experience with writing well before he wrote any of his, more famous stories.
Right.
Yeah.
In
1914, he worked...
Oops. Okay, never mind.
Actually, that's part of a bigger story. I'll tell that in a minute.
Yeah. I say before he got out of high school, he suffered from sleep paralysis, parasomnia, and he actually believed he was assaulted at night by these things called night gaunts. And much of his later work is thought to have been directly inspired by these terrors. Like, actually, night gaunts is the subject of a poem later on. They were like devil-like creatures without faces. He had that happen to him in high school, so that seems to be some of the inspiration for some of his weird tales that came later. And actually, before he got out of high school, in 1908, he later described as a nervous breakdown, and he never actually got his high school diploma. So. They say that he had this breakdown because he had a really hard time with the higher math. So, because he wanted to be an
astronomist.
Yeah, an astronomer, and you have to know like calculus and all that stuff. And he had such a hard time with it that it gave him a nervous breakdown.
That's understandable. I totally understand that. Calculus sucks.
And it was probably exacerbated because in 1904 his grandpa died, Grandpappy Whipple. And he had to move with his mom into like a really shitty little duplex that was obviously not the kind of place he was used to living. And so he, had this very tiny space he had to share with his mother, who was still really traumatized by what happened to his father. So he had kind of a poor relationship. And he was very suicidal at the time. He had a lot of suicidal thoughts, and he would just ride his bike like by this little river near where he lived and like contemplate just drowning himself. But he didn't because he was just too intellectually curious. There's too much stuff that he wanted to know about, which is another theme in his writing about, these people that are curious about these really macabre and maybe things that they shouldn't know about.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see kind of the contrast between his personal life, wanting to understand all this stuff, and then in his work, like he clearly has this like theme throughout all of his works about knowledge that shouldn't be known, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. Things that should stay hidden. So I think it's really interesting, the dichotomy of him and his personal life and that theme. Like I wonder if there was some reason for him writing like that, I guess. Like, was there something that he just... Yeah, like, maybe calculus or something kind of set that off in him. Like, I'm not saying, like, he discovered any, like, supernatural stuff. I just think it's interesting how he kind of sought out and also fought against certain forms of knowledge.
I think it, to me, seems like the sort of morbid curiosity that people get, right? Like watching a plane wreck, or it's like you can't look away, and you want to know about these things that afterward you realize that you don't really regret it, but it was not pleasant at all.
Right.
I think he takes that, because it's a very relatable theme, right? Like pretty much anybody you talk to will know exactly that kind of feeling that you're talking about, and I think he uses that and takes it further and basically makes it into like, yeah, you do really regret this. This was a mistake, and now you're insane, and a tentacle
like to the point where
up your
the
butt.
Knowledge itself is malevolent almost.
So after he dropped out of high school, he was like basically just a NEET for 5 years, hanging out, writing poetry. He hardly ever went outside. So he's very pale, very gaunt looking guy. He had that sort of like sunken eyes thing. If you just look up a picture of him, he looks a little bit weird, but also very serious.
He looks a lot like a guy we know. So.
Yeah, except that guy's a lot more handsome.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
The gaunt, thin, drawn eyes,
Yeah, a little too much time traveling, I think.
Yeah.
No.
That's what kind of like what Wig looks like.
That
It's kind of like, if you look at the side profile, it's pretty much the Wig Buttles right there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but like
I had that
handsome.
thought on my own when we were like researching this. I also had that thought. It's strange.
Anyway,
but so
he used to read like pulp magazines all the time. This is a funny story. And there was this pulp magazine he liked to read called The Argosy. And if you don't know, the Argosy just means like an Argosy. It's just an old word for like a very large ship. And it's probably... Probably like the Argonauts are related, They
like
probably have very similar roots.
And the Argosy, yeah.
Anyway, so...
From? I'm sorry, I thought that was an interesting aside, because the Odyssey is about, Odysseus, and then the Argosy is about the Argonauts, maybe? I don't know how Greek works. I'm sure Lovecraft did, but I have.
Oh, I just mean that's probably where the word Argonaut comes from. Now, I don't know, but etymologically probably has the same root.
I don't know. I'm sure
we are going to get
knows.
Some Spurg is going to spurg out in the comments. How do you not know?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good, though, because then we'll know. So please,
because then we'll know, and it's great. Please spurg out. Yes, do spurg out as much as possible.
Too much.
Yeah, but not too much, because I don't like to do a lot of... Actually, that's not true. I like to read, as we mentioned last week, and they made fun of me for it, but it's okay. I just don't like to read the comments.
So anyway, right, so he's reading this pulp magazine, The Argosy, and this guy, Fred Jackson, would write love stories for it, and Lovecraft thought that they were so, like, insipid and crappy that he wrote a diss letter in, like, poetic verse. So he pretty much, like, wrote one of the original diss songs.
Yeah, was HP Lovecraft the first battle rapper? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, and he sent that out in 1913, and the editor published it, and he started a huge flame war, and like he would write all sorts of like couplet poems, like talking shit about Fred Jackson, and all his supporters would write like talking shit about him.
That's hilarious. So it was so it was really it was a rap battle on paper.
Yeah, it was like a forum flame war.
Yeah,
nice.
I'm gonna start doing that to Jim Fetzer if he doesn't get on the show.
Yeah.
So didn't at one point,
that was actually. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You finish your.
Oh, he actually got noticed by this guy Edward Doss, who is the president of the United Amateur Press Association, the UAPA, and he invited Lovecraft to join their little society they had going on to publish, like his amateur works and that sort of thing. So it actually was a really good long-term decision to start talking shit about people.
So he basically shit posted so hard that he got allowed into like a secret society.
Pretty much, yeah. Pretty much that's what happened. And it's a good thing too, because I guess he tried to get into the National Guard, but he failed the physical. So it's a good thing his shit posting skills were as good as they were.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because he had a lot of anxiety about not participating in World War One.
Right, well,
he felt
don't people of his kind have a lot of anxiety anyway? I mean, like,
he's not.
He's not. I thought he was related.
He's Anglo, dude.
Okay,
he's
Turbo Anglo.
Turbo Anglo. Okay, so eternal.
You can
Anglo.
go online
Gotcha.
and you can look up his ancestry back to like his great.
I'm kidding. He's an eternal Anglo. So therefore, he has the guilt and anxiety, but just not necessarily genetically there. Not from Tay-Sachs, but from being Anglo. Right. Got it. I got it.
Do you want to talk about how he was kind of descended from like that Puritan stock, and I think that kind of had an influence on his writing as well, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so I don't know. I mean, there's not really like any formal thing. I just think it's like interesting how he came from basically the original settlers of America, and even by his time, like he didn't care for a lot of the like Italian immigrants and stuff like that were coming in the 1920s. So I think there's kind of a parallel between that, and then in a lot of his works, there's these dying, decayed societies and ancient things that used to be a lot greater than they were, and they're not as great anymore now and stuff like that. So I think probably there was some subtle influence between, him being descended from like these blue-blooded Yankee New Englanders, and because I mean the New Englanders basically lost New England by the time the 1920s rolled around. There was Italian immigrants, Irish immigrants, and so on. So I don't know. I don't know if that had maybe some sort of influence on his writing or not, but it's kind of interesting to think about.
That, as a kind of a tangent, I'm glad you mentioned that, because this idea of, decadence, the decay of a society, is a very common theme. And we all basically agree with that, I think. That we're, if you want to...
He was definitely... I don't even want to say shitlordy, because like he had views that were in line with the society of the time, but he definitely kind of, I think, felt those things more strongly than the average person probably did at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think he was definitely aware of how things used to be and how they were,
and how they were declining
in the 1910s and 20s.
Yeah, basically the Kali Yuga, if you want to, get a little Hindu in there. So I was going to read, like, some stuff from the Kali Yuga page, because it's a remarkable parallel, but I'll just leave that for some other time.
No, if it fits, go ahead. If it fits, go ahead, yeah.
Well, it fits with today. It says prophesied events during the Kali Yuga. That's what I mean.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Okay, no. Never mind then.
I'll save the autism for later. Anyway, he worked for
we'll do that later, yeah.
United Amateur Press Association, right? And he started writing. He was very prolific. He published 13 issues of his paper called The Conservative from 1915 to 1923. Probably not like the NRO. I'm not really sure what conservative meant back then. Today, it pretty much just means low-tax liberal.
Right.
But it might have had a different context back then, because that was, part of the Roaring '20s.
Mm-hmm. Well, part of he was in the. You said that he was in the UAPA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and wasn't there there was a lot of famous authors came out of there. like Robert Bloch, the guy who wrote Psycho, Robert E. Howard, who wrote Conan the Barbarian. Like, these are all people that, like, he was, like, corresponding with and actually may have influenced.
Yeah, he corresponded with a ton of people, actually. He is one of, like, they estimate he's probably one of the most prolific letter writers of that century. Like, he just wrote to people constantly, writing letters all the time. Which is great if you don't have a job, nothing better to do.
Right.
And he eventually became, yeah. Start writing some letters at least.
Right.
Snail mail them to grandma, so you don't have
grandma
to
or
read her
Donald
posts.
Trump or something. Yeah. I hear Donald Trump reads all his mails, so send him. Emails in.
Every single one, I'm sure.
And Jim Fetzer, if you can get his address.
So Lovecraft, he became the editor and the president, actually, of the UAPA, and eventually of the National Amateur Press Association, which was a rival group. But, I think he just kind of moved on from that eventually. But it was good that he joined the group, the UAPA, because he started writing fiction again. Like I said, he mostly wrote essays and short stories and little poems talking crap about love story writers. But he started writing again in 1917 fiction. He wrote The Tomb and Dagon in the summer of 1917. Now, we talked about nervous breakdowns a lot, which unfortunately seems to run in his family. And his mom had a
one of
nervous
those.
breakdown.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1919. And then really tragically, in 1920, she was at a mental hospital, and they did a gallbladder surgery, and they botched it, and she died.
I'm kind of surprised they even did gallbladder surgeries back then. I didn't know that they had that capability.
I didn't think they even knew what the gallbladder was in the 20s.
Well, apparently they didn't because she died.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
They're like, what the hell is this thing?
Oh, God. The poor woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that was obviously devastating to him. And for a couple weeks, he was doing his hermit thing. But in July 1921, he went to Boston to just a little amateur journalist convention. And that's where he met Sonia Green.
Wait a minute. You're saying that his wife was Jewish?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she's
Russian
from
Jewish.
Ukraine.
And I gotta say,
owned a hat shop.
I understand those Khazar milkers, man.
She's a merchant? He married a merchant.
Literal merchant. And she was 7 years older than him, too.
Yeah, which is funny because, she had relations before. I believe at one point she said that he performed satisfactorily as a lover, even though she had to take all the initiative.
I think it was
aspects of the relationship.
It was
whatever.
Like,
she's a fucking thought.
It was something funny.
So,
she was a thought, but it was just very funny the way it was phrased. It was something like he did very satisfactory.
He performed very satisfactorily, although she had to take the initiative in all aspects of the relationship. She said she attributed his passive nature to the stultifying upbringing by his mother. When here you get the puritanical aspect of it. Most Puritans aren't into like crazy sex, so. Apparently he also got fat. He got fat on the Jews cooking, so, which is interesting.
I know that
comfy.
he didn't even know what homosexuals were until he was in his 30s. So, it's not
God,
like
I wish it were like that now, dude.
I know.
I wish it was like that
It's
now.
in one of his letters.
Yeah. Oh.
He didn't even know what they were.
Men who put rubber fist in my ass
In my anus. And the man who tried to put rubber fist in my anus. Yeah.
Well, now my anus is broken.
Right? But I mean, could you imagine instead of like in third grade, hey, Dad, what does it mean? Like now, yeah, oh my God. It must have been so nice back then to not have the fucking LGBTQPIPQAITSTPFMLM agenda shoved straight down your throat 24 hours a day like it is today.
Right?
Imagine not knowing what a gay person was.
in your third.
Oh, I imagine John Lennon wrote a song about that. Like, no, imagine there's no faggots.
There's no faggots.
It's easy if you try. Just fire up
Paddy,
the ovens.
Paddy, if you're listening to us, we got a good one.
Pat, yeah, there's a little teaser for you guys. But shit, dude, where'd we go? Yeah,
So he married this nice Jewish and lived a comfy, neat life while she did all the work. Honestly, like,
hold on,
that's
a Jew did all the work.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Maybe in the
right?
home.
Apparently
Maybe in the
she
home.
didn't
Maybe in the home.
Well, she was a writer too. Like, she wrote a few short stories that he edited. So
How to Trick the Goyim.
Literally, he writes volumes
I guess
and
he helped out
volumes
some.
and volumes of overly verbose writing. She writes 3 short stories. Yeah, she's a writer.
you know, she cooked for him at least, I guess.
Right. Yeah, he got fat. He got fat on her matzah, so whatever.
Damn. Anyway. So, apparently she didn't work too well because almost immediately after moving in with her in 24, they lived in Brooklyn, of course. Her hat shop went bankrupt, and HP was offered an editor position.
She's not a very good Jew, is she?
Yeah, apparently not.
No, bankruptcy's a tool.
but-
You can use bankruptcy to actually make money. So,
Well, it doesn't sound like she did.
right.
Yeah, but so HP, he got an offer to work as an editor for a magazine, but he turned it down because he didn't want to move to Chicago. So his neat tendencies were running wild throughout his life. It's a really common theme, actually.
To be fair, who wants to move to Chicago?
Well, it was nice then. That's the thing.
Yeah,
That was
that's
before it turned into Chirac.
Yeah. So, he moved into this little neighborhood in Brooklyn called Red Hook, a little shitty apartment, and his wife moved to work in Cleveland. And he became depressed by all the foreigners in the city. You know, all our New York boys know that feel when. And he had a really hard time keeping a job down, which is not a terrible surprise because I don't really think anyone wants to hire a 34-year-old NEET.
Right.
And it actually, in a way, was a good thing, at least for his readers, because he started writing less nostalgic sort of stories and started writing really bleak and misanthropic works, such as The Horror at Red Hook and one that's just called He. So that is probably about the point when he really started to write the dark cosmic horror stuff, which, you know, is good for us. Although some of his early works on the dream cycle stuff he wrote even before 1920 are really good and have sort of themes like that. But it went downhill from there in terms of the optimism, so to speak.
Yeah, there's definitely not a lot of optimism.
Yeah,
in
his smile, optimism gone. Yeah.
I don't think
wait. Remember, you said that he didn't know anything about gays until he was 30. Don't forget that he was part of this thing called the Kalem Club, and him and his protege Frank Belknap Long, a bookseller named George Kirk, and his close friend Samuel Loveman, who of course was Jewish, but he didn't know. This is where he was friends with Lovecraft for a long time, and Lovecraft had no idea. Well, actually, the thing is that Lovecraft, being puritanical as he was, didn't really like talking about sex. Didn't know that Loveman was gay, and that all of his other friends were gay.
I just think it's so funny that he's friends with all these like gay guys, and he doesn't know what a homosexual is.
Right, gay Jews.
He's He's that one straight friend they have.
Yeah, but how do you not know? How do you not know? No, they're just giving each other a long kiss goodnight. Like what?
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, dude, it's just his cousin, I guess, that lives with him. I don't understand it.
Right, it's his weird cousin who
Just
wears a dress. It's just weird. Yeah, yeah.
There's just a couple of bachelors.
Right?
Confirmed bachelors.
Confirmed bachelors. Oh my god. Yeah, so oh, I'm sorry, I totally,
it's also-
totally hijacked that whole thing there.
I know, it's just so strange to me that he just didn't know. I can't get over that.
Well, he had to get a
think it's
job.
funny
He
that-
had to get a job for a while, right? Like as a clerk and stuff, because he had like
Well, he tried.
he tried. Yeah, he tried. He tried to. He was the editor of like Weird Tales magazine. And because but he was offered to him, he didn't take it because he didn't want to move to Chicago. So you know,
Right.
yeah. So he actually was replaced by a guy named Farnsworth Wright, who Lovecraft had like highly criticized, who then took the magazine to like, you know, success. But and then actually Lovecraft, yeah, and then Lovecraft's submissions were rejected by Wright. Oh, gee, I wonder why.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
You shouldn't
not
have
to
wrote
mention
so
the
many
fact
diss
that,
songs.
well, not just the diss songs. I guess that like Lovecraft had written stories that hinted at necrophilia.
Ooh.
So
Hold on, how the fuck does he know what necrophilia is? And he
right when he doesn't know what homosexuality is. Yeah, right. That's one of those things
Well,
now wait. That's one of those things that's on that follows underneath the the what do you call it? The myths of HP Lovecraft, which we'll get into and maybe in the I don't know the second hour or whatever. But there's a lot of myths surrounding HP Lovecraft. And things that may be true, may not be true. Well, like, okay, for example, there's a myth. H.P. Lovecraft was gay. Well, the facts are that he had little success with women, and he had many male friends. You know, a lot of guys like that, you know, thin, 30s, dressed, you know, very neat and clean. Well, must be gay, right? Well, don't forget he was married. And she described him as what the exact quote, actually, Scott, is adequately excellent lover.
How are you adequately excellent?
Yeah,
Like,
it's one or the other. It's you can't be
terms.
both.
Yeah.
Under
I guess he's
it's
great enough.
yeah, he's great enough. But friends of his like Robert Barlow, and of course we mentioned Samuel Loveman and a guy named Hart Crane, who were really, really good friends of him, were homosexuals. But like we said, Lovecraft didn't even realize this. He even makes his attitudes on homosexuality clear in a letter. Now this is, and I quote, "As a matter of fact, although, of course, I always knew that pederasty was a disgusting custom in many ancient nations, I had never heard of homosexuality as an actual instinct until I was over 30, which beats your record." What? Anyway, it is possible, I think, that this perversion occurs more frequently in some periods than in others, owing to obscure biological and psychological causes. Decadent ages, when psychology is unsettled, seem to favor it. Of course, in ancient times, the extent of the practice of pederasty, as a custom which most simply applied blindly without any special inclination, cannot be taken as any measure to the extent of the actual physiological perversion. That's a quote from Lovecraft himself. So, in addition, there's a letter to one August Derleth from 1933. He also writes, and I quote, "So far as the case of homosexuality goes, the primary and vital objection against it is that it is naturally, physically and involuntarily, not merely morally or aesthetically, repugnant to the overwhelming bulk of mankind. Some might argue that this was merely defensive posturing on Lovecraft's part, and yet no evidence exists to indicate that he had any homosexual inclinations. But this is not to say that his heterosexual inclinations were especially strong either. Lovecraft, like many intellectuals, focused his intentions and efforts on mental rather than physical pursuits, and simply didn't have any strong interests at all. So therefore he was extremely principled."
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like one of like these all right guys. Like he's
Yeah.
I think
Very,
he
very
he's
principled.
very principled. I think he would fit in just fine.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he hated foreigners too.
He hated foreigners. He hated foreigners. He was a NEET. He didn't know about gays. The best part of that whole thing, he said, I never heard of homosexuality as an actual instinct till I was over 30, which beats your record. Like, what? Like, he's writing to somebody.
Talking about the first time he heard about homosexuals. Like,
yeah, totally. So you heard about it when you were 28. Well, I didn't hear about it till I was 30. Ha ha ha. Like, I guess if there was a competition, he wins. But
it's just so crazy to me that people existed who didn't know what homosexuals were until after like they were old enough to like buy a house.
Well, back then you could buy a house when you were 12. So
yeah, that's true. Well, nowadays you can't make it to 12 without hearing about fucking gays. So
that's what I'm saying. You're not a 9-year-old coming home talking about, Daddy, what does it mean when two boys kiss each other? I saw that on the playground.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
Our society's decadent.
Anyway, so where were we?
Anyways.
Right. Okay. So, his mom died. He married that Jewess. Their business failed. And then he moved to Red Hook, and that's where his writing started getting really bleak. In 1926, he decided that he wanted to go back to Providence because he is a very nostalgic person. He spent most of his childhood at this one place, this really nice home. He had this awesome grandpa, who actually, I forgot to mention, Grandpappy Whipple inspired a lot of his interest in Gothic and weird fiction because he would tell him all sorts of stories to entertain HP when he was young. He would tell him all kinds of these weird fiction stories and that are a little macabre and not, outside the usual sort of fairy tales that children like to hear about. So he wanted to go back home and live with his aunts. And his aunts, he loved his aunts. They helped raise him, and they had a really good relationship. But they didn't like his wife. They didn't want her to start a business there because they couldn't stomach him being married to a tradeswoman. So obviously it wasn't going to work out, and he divorced Sonia in 1929, and he moved back to Providence. And that's actually when he really ramped up his writing. He wrote all sorts of stuff, like At the Mountains of Madness, which is all right. He wrote Shadow Out of Time. After he would just go take these long tours up and down the eastern seaboard, and that was a very big inspiration. So many of his writings feature like lighthouses and the ocean and these little ocean shanty, oceanside shanty towns. Mm-hmm. These kinds of themes, and it all makes sense considering the kind of stuff he would do for fun.
Yeah, it seems like he was one of those people who the shittier his life got, the better his work
his writing
got.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, once he got back to Providence, he did a lot of ghostwriting too.
Yeah, wasn't that basically to make ends meet though?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, one of his biggest clients was Harry Houdini.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. Whose real name is Eric Wise. Just in case you didn't know that.
Damn.
Harry Houdini's Eric Wise. Yes, a Jew.
Wow, a Jew changing his name.
His name to and who could escape from anything.
And then he goes into entertainment.
And what could escape from anything, including like a box in chains underwater. Interesting.
Yeah, or like a shower room that.
Right. Or a death camp whose grandparents tied birds together and flew out. Yeah. Let's not. Yeah.
We need to do.
Actually, you know what? Let's do.
Why haven't we done a Holocaust episode yet?
You know what? Because we will. You know what? Let's do now though. Let's take a little bit of a break. How about that? Let's take a break.
You had me all hyped up. I thought we were going to do something else.
You want to do Holocaust stuff?
No, you made it sound exciting, and all you said was we're taking a break.
Well, no, I was like,
unless there's like an exciting song.
When you want to read the poem,
song, perhaps.
You want me to read the poem first? Because we gotta get to that later.
Yeah, let's do that later. We gotta introduce
Okay.
it first.
Yeah, we're gonna introduce it. Yeah,
Okay.
Do we have an exciting song though? Maybe to make the break worthwhile. Anything?
Well, we have a song from our good friend Paddy Tarleton. It's called "Rise, You Sons of the Southland." It's a little hint to the Sweetlanders and a little hint to those people in New Orleans who just recently lost a few statues, and a little more of our American white history. So going into the break, I know that's a total fucking letdown, but yeah, Paddy Tarleton, "Rise, You Sons of the Southland." We'll be back.
That New Orleans shit has me so fucking heated.
Yeah, I know.
Nicholas van Rensburg was a prophet for the Boer people. He said, in these days, white racism will be on the increase all over the world, especially in Europe. For the Afrikaner nation, it will be a dark time, where many forces will be aligned against it. But then the Afrikaners will rise again and regain their freedom. I see a pail full of blood toppling, falling, and from the pail will rise the flag, to fly again over a free nation. Hoist the banner of the Boer, curse upon the savage hordes, face the wind and hail the Lord. Rise, rise, you sons of our Southland, the blood of the age shall come to pass. The scourge of decay, it will not last. There's snakes behind every blade of grass. March on, bold sons of the Transvaal. I see a time when the world will be plowed under, and this will be the beginning of the third and the last World War. Everything will be in confusion. And then I saw a snake lying on the plowed land. I could not see its head or tail. Hoist the banner of the Boer, curse upon the savage hordes, face the wind and hail the Lord. Rise, rise, the soul of our Southland. The sickle sweeps across the land. This earth delivered to the Lamb. New demons die while old ghosts stand. Go forth and conquer children. An aloe stands in Europe, and it changes to a bunch of flowers, cosmos, crown of honor, and the devil's bush. A Zulu beast approaches from the Union, the west. Many small aloes are destroyed in Europe, and the large trees are an avenue. They wither and go northwest. Hoist the banner of the Boer, curse upon the savage horde, face the wind and hail the Lord. Rise, rise, the soul of our Southland. The flowers are severed by the sword. The herd are frantic running forth. The time is now to settle this score. Fight on, brave sons. A number of cattle are running in Europe, gray ones in between, and the grass is alight in this land. With a massive smoke cloud, the fire moves southwest. And in a field where the black cattle pass through, there are maize cobs which become clean and white, and the wheel which turned there now turns here in the Union. Hoist the banner of the Boer, curse upon of our Southland. Rise, rise, you sons of our Southland.
All right, everybody, we're back. We're talking about one Mr. H.P. Lovecraft and his writings and his psychoses and his all the other things that go along with that guy. The neuroses. Everybody in his family seemed to have had a nervous breakdown. But during the break, we were talking about his relationship with a certain type of governmental style known as socialism. Was it Scott or Adam? Mm-hmm. You want to start with that?
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, he was. So just to give a really quick finish his biography.
Oh yeah, we weren't done.
Well, just like when he in his later years, he would mentor a lot of young authors, and he eventually became involved in a lot more like politics and more worldly stuff. And that's when he became like an FDR. Wait a minute. FDR was after he became like one of the Roosevelts. He was really inspired by that, and he became a socialist.
Teddy Roosevelt. No. Well, Teddy Roosevelt wasn't really a socialist, I don't think. He was a kind of a big government guy. FDR
was a big government guy. Yeah. FDR was a pure, unadulterated socialist.
But he didn't get elected until 1933, I think it was.
Okay, because he didn't die till 37. HP.
Right.
Yeah, so you're talking about his late 40s. So yeah.
But that didn't really mean the same thing that it means today.
Well, I don't know if it necessarily meant something different so much as it didn't have such a colossal failure of a track record back then.
It hadn't had the entire 20th century to prove what a failure socialism really is.
Right. Well, in a lot of ways, socialism really was different back then than it is now. Socialism now obviously is pretty much completely dysgenic. Like, if you look at any fucking group of anarcho-communists, they're like the genetic refuse of society. They all are they're all ugly. They're fat.
How is it that every tranny ends up in an anarcho communist group? You know,
dude. We were talking about this yesterday or something. Like what, 2 out of 1,000 people in the general population are trannies, and like 1 out of 5 ANCOMs is a tranny.
Right. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so socialism back then, it was a very optimistic sort of philosophy, and I think you saw that a lot in the 1920s. Was this idea that like science would cure basically everything that ails man. Socialism was described as a scientific political philosophy, I think even by Marx. There was...
Sorry, Marx just makes me laugh.
I know we were talking about... Oh, I know. I know we were talking about during the break, like I brought up Italian Futurism as an art movement, and you can like just go look up Italian Futurism on like Google Images, and you can kind of see this optimistic sort of artwork, these big cities. Modernity wasn't considered the poison that I think a lot of us would consider it today. It was viewed as a positive development, and I think that socialism was kind of viewed in the same way. Even like, I know I mentioned Superman being like the man of tomorrow as one of like his nicknames or whatever. You saw that in a lot of culture back then, or like in music. Rhapsody in Blue is kind of the same thing, where they tried to emulate the sounds of cities. So cities and modern life wasn't viewed as this horrible thing that we probably all think it is. It was viewed as a way for man to lift himself out of the superstitions of the last millennia, or whatever you want to call it. So in that light, I don't think that Lovecraft being a socialist is necessarily as condemning of a thing as it would be today, because basically everyone and their grandma was a socialist, just because that was seen as like the new scientific development. which is kind of ironic when you consider how much of his writing goes against the idea of science as anything that can save mankind.
Yeah, most of the time it is actually the ultimate doom.
Right.
Whoa. Are you saying you don't fucking love science?
I'm ambivalent.
Yeah.
No, I don't fucking love it. I mean, it's kind of nice to, have the internet and not die of polio, but I don't know about the rest of it.
Right, that's kind of where I'm at with it.
But yeah, like back then that wasn't like, I don't think as many people were skeptical about the future as we are now. Like, let's be honest, does any of us think the next 100 years are going to be fun? Like for anybody?
Nah.
No.
Nope.
I don't think. Like, you can even see that today in our fiction, science fiction and stuff like that. When was the last time there was a really positive science fiction story? And I don't even.
There hasn't. It's always been this dystopian nightmare. Like that's. Yeah, it used to be
Hallmark Family Values positive, but I mean, like, in what science fiction story anymore is the science fiction setting better than the present? I can't think of any.
Well, there isn't one. I mean, like I said, it's been this dystopic nightmare. Like it's always been like Blade Runner, where like everything is dark and Asian, and what is that?
Oh God!
But like like it's like this horrible.
But that was the thing back in the 1910s and the 1920s. You didn't.
Science was the future was a beautiful thing. It would be flying cars and
which is
and
crazy,
like railroad.
Came out of World War I. And they still had that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
Little did they know that what lurked on the horizon was chickens hooked up to virtual reality headsets.
Jesus Christ. So, yeah.
That's what the chicken is.
That's what all the chicken is like on the inside of his brain. Is just like,
But it's just a dumb chicken, so it can't express that. So it's just like,
those poor chickens.
Like, so
why
quiet.
would you put a VR headset on a bird? Like, literally.
Yeah, where's mine?
Right?
Yeah,
I mean, like, we don't have VR headsets. I'm not sitting here with a VR headset right now. I don't have.
Actually, like, I don't know if this is going to get me kicked off the show, but I think I'm going to actually try one out this weekend.
You can try one out, but but don't tell anybody except for me on the side. So
okay, all right, I will keep it quiet. All right.
And Adam. Okay. So yeah, it probably won't get you kicked off. It'll probably get us to not use donations to buy those. So it's a good thing we spent all the donations on everybody's new mic. So like.
Send us donations so we can express to you properly the horror of VR headsets.
Yeah, so we can all just go, ah!
Yeah, the next episode is 2 hours of us screaming.
Just screaming. Hey, okay, everybody turn your VR headset. No, it's like, what was it, like Enoch said with the nightmare goggles? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's exactly the same. Yeah, here's my VR goggles. Oh, it's exactly the same.
2 hours of us screaming and then a chicken in the background.
Okay, so let's get back to we are way off. Let's get back to HP Lovecraft. So,
did you want to talk about the myths now?
Yeah, do you guys want to? I mean, I
Wasn't
did
there something else you wanted to go over, Adam? I don't remember. I thought there was other stuff.
The dream cycle stuff.
Yeah. Let's do the dream cycle stuff now, and then we'll go into some of the myths, because there's so many myths. Well, I also want to get into some of his creations, like Cthulhu and and whatnot. So,
So, all right, let me preface this real quick by saying, a while back I read At the Mountains of Madness. That was the first Lovecraft I ever read, and I thought it was a pretty cool story.
A while back, meaning yesterday.
No, I actually read it.
I'm joking.
A few weeks. Anyway, the point is, it's a good story. It's a cool story. It's very verbose. It's a very long read, and it's not I felt didn't do that good of a job of keeping me hooked the entire time. Now go ahead and freak out in the comments about that, but I started reading some of his other stuff now. Some of what is described as his dream cycle or his dream world works, and such as his short stories Polaris, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, which There's a pretty cool Black Sabbath song called "Behind the Wall of Sleep." It's from their first album.
That's another thing we can talk about is how much he's influenced the world of music, especially metal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, the White Ship, that's another really good story. And there's a central theme of... So he has this concept that dreams, the experiences you have in a dream are not unreal. That they're not just generated by your brain. They're actually visions or really like interactions with the real, the true, the unfiltered reality. And that's part of the reason why dreams always seem very incomprehensible. They are very inexplicable. It can be very difficult to explain what happened in a dream, even if you vividly experienced it. And that's part of a not a contradiction, but a sort of paradox of, if this stuff is real, why is it so hard to understand? Well, the idea is that our conscious, the sort of material conscious experience we have is filtered very heavily, and we're just not, when we're in that state of consciousness, we don't have even the capacity to describe it. And that is a very pervasive theme throughout all of his writings, of an inability to comprehend what they're seeing. And a sort of
I kind of agree with that, like, for real. I kind of do think that not always, of course. I think a lot of times dreams don't mean anything, but I do think that a lot of times dreams are people interacting with stuff outside of themselves. It's interesting you brought up the whole idea that our dreams are what reality is, and that's why they're so incomprehensible. There is a theory, and I wish I could remember like the name of it or anything, but basically there's a theory that what we see day to day isn't reality. Like the metaphor, okay, so you're at your computer and you click on a little file icon and the file opens. That's not reality. Like, reality is what's happening in the processor, and it's opening these things inside your computer, right? But you just see it interact with the screen. Reality, as we see it and experience it, is the screen, so to speak. And supposedly scientists did some sort of experiment with AI, and the experiment basically was they had like two different sets of populations, and one saw reality as it was, and the other was just attuned to what would help it like reproduce the most. And the one that didn't see reality actually evolutionarily won out over the one that did. So I don't know. I'm sure I just basically butchered whatever it is that I'm referencing. I hope someone else can, clarify for me.
That reminds me of what Nietzsche said in Beyond Good and Evil, where he says that you shouldn't, like, even if a judgment about something isn't true, if that judgment leads you to life-affirming philosophies and basically motivates you to try and transcend, mundane existence and create great works of art, even if it's a false judgment, it's still a better one, and you should go with it.
Interesting.
Which is
did you get that?
Very related
did you get that
to,
from the chapter titles?
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Good work.
Which is another common theme in Lovecraft's work, is not knowing what's real and what's not, and that being exposed to the truth is actually extremely detrimental. But I want to talk specifically about those short stories I mentioned, Polaris, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, and The White Ship. Now, those were written pretty early, in around 1920. And he creates these, well, he writes about these blissful sort of Elysian dreamscapes where everything is really great, very blissful, but it's like incomprehensible. it's extremely relatable because everyone's had these dreams that were great, but then when you wake up and try and remember them or describe them, you just are not able to. There's a feeling you get, and you can get descriptions of like fragments of the perception, but that's it.
Yeah, I definitely know what you're talking about. Like landscapes for me is one of those things that triggers that feeling.
Yeah, no,
Whatever
that's exactly it. I have these writings really spoke to me because I have had a lot of dreams in my life, and it's well, not as many as I would like, but I get this sense of this unreal in its greatness, this perception of a very deep-seated joy, and not so much like a pleasure in a hedonistic sense, but a sense of like peace and fulfillment.
Yeah, no, I totally get what you're talking about. Peaceful
and
kind of, yeah.
Like you could just be in this state forever, and you'd never get bored. You'd never be unhappy. It's like heaven.
Yeah,
and
no, I totally get that.
Right, I think probably a lot of our listeners could relate to that. Mm-hmm. And so these they really stuck out. Another thing that stuck out to me in these stories was how much great works of art are integrated into all of his descriptions. At the Mountains of Madness, in the caverns that they're exploring, almost every surface is just plastered with carvings in the wall, paintings, statues. Right. In the White Ship, all the places they visit in his little dreamscape, there's artwork all over. Like everything basically is art. And that to me seems like kind of what the point of art is supposed to be. It's something that is transcendent and inspires people and brings them these like transcendent feelings where you're being lifted up out of human limitations.
Well, it's kind of a like a rational versus irrational view on things. I mean, this also has to do with his skepticism on science and knowledge and things like that. And a lot of the times when one of his protagonists comes to a bad end, it's because they try to apply the rational to the irrational. And a lot of these things in his work aren't rational at all. Mm-hmm. Like, and art is not a rational thing. I mean, yeah, you have like color wheels and stuff like that, but that's not the art itself.
Those are tools.
Yeah, exactly. Art itself is an irrational subject. I mean, by its very nature, and it's subjective, and this, that, and the other.
And
so
yet,
it's interesting
it can be appreciated.
Right. So it's interesting how, like you said, it's on the surface of all these things, and it kind of just bypasses that whole rational mind altogether, almost as if rationality is a byproduct of human consciousness, and it's not something that exists out there, whereas the irrational dreams, the art, are things that exist out there in objective reality, or whatever you want to call it, whereas scientific knowledge doesn't exist out there. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling, I guess.
Think that's, I mean, rationality is like absolutely a human construct. It's a very recent construct. I mean, are wolves, wolves are smart. Like, they hunt in packs. They're far from being unintelligent, but what use would they have for rationality?
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's almost as if rationality is some sort of weird quirk or byproduct of the human brain rather than the human brain itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right. I believe that, yeah, 100%.
I don't know.
All right, well, now that we've gone down that rabbit hole.
Much more. Yeah. We're done. We solved philosophy.
Yeah.
Yes, we solved philosophy. Fuck you, Kurt Doolittle.
Whoa! Just coming right out.
Sorry. I've had a beer, so yeah.
His giant brain is plugging up his ears. He won't know.
Right.
That's
That's
a lot
a
for
philosophy. So back to Lovecraft. He's known for creating certain
Like characters.
Characters such as Cthulhu and what was the other one? Shit, I should have written it down. The one that Zach was talking about yesterday, Scott.
Nyarlathotep.
Yes.
I probably just mispronounced the shit
You
out of
totally
that. I'm sorry.
hacked the shit out of that, but it was Nyarlathotep. That's a lot of consonants in a row. Nyarlathotep. Also known as the Crawling Horror.
Let's spend the next 30 minutes trying to pronounce this correctly.
Yeah. Well,
That's short. You guys could.
He's come up with a lot of these things that have references to the old gods. Cthulhu comes from the sea. Nyarlathotep comes from from
Egyptian chaos gods.
Egyptian chaos gods. Yeah. A lot of these come from the elder gods, such as Abthoth, Azzanoth, Azorthoth, the Cloud Thing, Kithalpa, that's where the apostrophe is, Daeloth, Dehendra, Gaharath, and these are all like there's 100 of the elder gods, the elder things, that these these are outer gods that are ruled by Alzathoth, who is known as the blind idiot god, who holds court at the center of the universe. He basically runs the dark side of the universe. You guys have anything to say on the elders or the elder gods or any of that? The pantheon of
his
those?
creations have certainly been propagated throughout pop culture, but of course, as anything that pop culture gets its nasty little hands on, it's corrupted and made into a facsimile, a very crude one that of the original intention of the author. Whereas, Cthulhu,
this also comes from right. So Cthulhu is his creation, but it also is supposedly Cthulhu comes from ancient Sumer.
That is not true. That's a myth.
Right. Well, of course, that's one of the myths. Yes. A lot of that was a trick question, Scott.
I passed.
You passed? No. What about Azathoth?
No, as far as I know, he made up all of his elder gods except for Hastur, which he took from the guy who did the Carcosa thing. Fucking hell, what was it? Carcosa and the Yellow King were referenced in what's that show that came out with Matthew McConaughey not too long ago? Do you know what I'm talking about? He's a cop, True Detective, I think.
Oh, okay. They did a season on some weird shit. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of reference to the whole Carcosa thing and the Yellow King, which Lovecraft kind of referenced in a lot of his works as well.
Right, but here's the
thing.
Okay.
Azathoth, I brought that up on our Aleister Crowley episode because that's the name that Aleister Crowley gives to one of the demons that he cited in one of his rituals.
Well, no,
and they were alive at about the same time.
Azagthoth. It's a different name.
Are you sure?
Azathoth is not Azagthoth. Azagthoth is what Crowley was referring to.
Are we sure he didn't just rip that off, throw in a G?
I mean, it's possible. It's possible that he did. But
I don't know. I just hate that guy so much. So
I know you do.
Just any
opportunity to talk shit.
Yeah, no. But then, of course, you have Lovecraft's other one, Shub-Niggurath, which has very, very racist word in the middle.
Shove nigger ass.
Right.
Down the stairs.
Well, I mean, coming up with that, like we
street.
also, speaking of shove niggurath, HP Lovecraft wrote a poem, in 1912 called "On the Creation of Niggers." You guys want to hear it?
Are you gonna recite it?
I'm gonna. You guys want to hear it?
Yeah, he was
I
22
asked.
at the time.
22 years old. This is a 22-year-old HP Lovecraft. Didn't go outside very often. Kind of looked a lot like our friend here, Wig Buttles. Very thin, gaunt, nerdy. But anyways, so when long ago the gods created earth, in Jove's fair image man was shaped at birth. The beasts for lesser parts were next designed, yet were they too remote for humankind. To fill the gap and join the rest to man, the Olympian host conceived a clever plan. A beast they wrought in semi-human figure, filled it with vice, and called the thing a nigger.
Dun, dun, dun.
I know, we need to get that stinger. Dun, dun, dun. That'd be perfect for that. Like at the end of that, yeah. But he was racist. This guy, this H.P. Lovecraft guy,
Not terribly anti-Semitic.
not anti-Semitic, but he did not like niggers. Anyways, so
I do not associate with niggers.
that's such a great drop, that little Indian kid. Anyways, so there's another myth about, speaking of Aleister Crowley, that he or his wife Sonia was associated with the one Aleister Crowley that you hate so much, Adam. So there's the Simon edition of the Necronomicon. Actually, real quick, you guys want to get into the Necronomicon? And that was one of the things that he wrote. Anybody?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know much about it. I just know that it's cited a lot.
Oosh. You don't know much about the Necronomicon? How do you know, like this guy and you don't know? Are you kidding me right now?
I never read it.
I'm gonna have to edit this. Hold on a second. Okay, so 27. Write this down. 2709. Somebody look up the Necronomicon real quick. I mean, like, we have to.
What do you want to know about it?
I thought you...
Yeah, that's why I thought one of you guys had done some research.
No, I know what it is in general. I didn't know like how specific you wanted it to be.
Well, let's get into it just a little, like, talk about it. You know what I mean? Like.
Okay. Are we recording or did you?
No, I actually. Well, I'm gonna edit this out. So, okay.
Okay.
Okay. In 3 and 2 and so of course there's the Necronomicon. Which is it's a fictional grimoire, which is a textbook of magic, which appeared in the stories that Lovecraft wrote, and a lot of his followers wrote about it. Started first in 1924 in the story of the Hound, and then through its. There we go. We have the mad Arab Abdul al-Razed again, and quoted again in The Nameless City. And it contains all the accounts of the old ones, so like Cthulhu, and like we were just talking about, the other elder gods that he didn't, that he actually didn't copy from Sumer.
There's a lot of people who think the Necronomicon is real, and he was referencing something. It was completely made up by Lovecraft himself. Sorry to spoil that. You probably wouldn't want to read it anyway, because basically anyone who does goes insane. Like, you don't want to read it, so it's a good start.
The actual name means an image of the law of the dead. So, it's also been translated to the Book of the Names of the Dead, or the Book of the Laws of the Dead, the Book of Dead Names, the Knower of the Laws of the Dead. So his own, people have already said that his own etymology is almost entirely unsound. So he basically fake. It's basically just his own invention.
It just sounded cool.
It just, yeah, well, dude, that name, the Necronomicon, right? I want to go to the Necronomicon. Isn't it in San Diego? No, no, wait, that's, yeah. Anyways, yeah, it's like, it's the whole thing. Like, I want to get waterboarded. That sounds like fun. No, so the Necronomicon, he wrote himself. So this is a typical, like, Lovecraftian type answer. Now, about the terrible and forbidden books, I am forced to say that most of them are purely imaginary. There was never any Abdul Alhazred or Necronomicon, for I invented these names myself. Robert Bloch devised the idea of Ludwig Prynne and his Divinis Mysteriis, while the Book of Ebion is an invention of Clark Ashton Smith's. Robert E. Howard is responsible for Friedrich von Jundt and his, oh fuck, that's a long word, Ausfrustessian Kulten. As for seriously written books on dark, occult, and supernatural themes, in truth, they don't amount to much. That's why it's more fun to invent mythical works like the Necronomicon and the Book on Ebion. So,
Robert E. Howard was the guy who invented Conan the Barbarian.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
That's his big thing. And they were, I know they were really good friends, him and Lovecraft.
Well,
like
Robert E. Howard was one of the correspondents that he had a while back while he was in that, was it EUBPA or whatever it's called, Adam?
Mm-hmm. Oh, the UAPA?
UAPA, excuse me. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's where he
Robert Howard actually committed suicide.
Probably from
his mom. No, his mom died, and he just decided he didn't want to go on living anymore without his mom. And he went out in the car after he found out and just shot himself in the head. Really interesting guy. We could do a whole thing on him, but it's not that paranormal.
No, it's just really weird. It's not paranormal at all.
Yeah, he had the same kind of life as Lovecraft did, as far as like a really tragic life and all that kind of
his
stuff.
parents did a lot of weird stuff. His mother killed herself and all that stuff and whatever. So, like, kind of to reinforce the book's fictionalization. So the name of the book is the Necronomicon. The writer of the Necronomicon is Abdul Alhazred. It's not even a grammatically correct Arabic name. So, like, Abdul means the worshipper / slave of. It's fine. But Alhazred, it doesn't even, like, real as, like, a sort of a, you know what I mean? Like,
no,
so,
that, like, Lovecraft, he made that up when he was a kid.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. So, like, the people that take this serious are retarded,
dumb.
Basically. Dumb, yeah.
They're dumb.
Well, there's twice we've talked about dumb things in 2 weeks. Anyways, there's like the whole fictional history of this. So, he wrote like a pseudo history. Here's the thing about the Necronomicon is he wrote like a backstory to it. You know, he wrote this thing. It was published after he died. I mean, in 38, it was called The History of the Necronomicon. So originally the book was called the Al-Azif. So he defined it as the nocturnal sound made by insects supposed to be the howling of demons. And he had a drawing from this guy, Samuel Henley, who had written this thing about these nocturnal insects which presage evil, which alluded kind of to the legend of Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, and in the Bible, like Psalm 91:5. So they talk about the bugs at night or the night terrors or whatever. Anyways, so he went through and made up this big, long, fake history, including a fake history for this Alhazred guy, who's supposedly to be like a half-crazed Arab. You don't have to repeat yourself. Who like worshipped these Lovecraftian entities, Yog-Sothoth and Cthulhu. We have again. He's described as being from Yemen, and he knew the subterranean secrets of Memphis and the empty quarter of Arabia, where he discovered the nameless city below Iram. He lived in Damascus, and that's where he allegedly wrote this Al-Azif before he supposedly died in 738. Now, all this stuff comes from a kid. Like, this was written like by, he started this when he was a kid, which is
it's really impressive.
Yeah. Again, they're talking about a kid who is writing and quoting poetry at 3 years old and 6 years old and whatever. I'm sorry. He wrote, so Azif gained considerable considerable circulation amongst the philosophers in 950, and it was translated into Greek. And like he made this long history that went all the way through like the first century, all the way through the first century through the 1200s, where an actual real life scholar, this Danish guy named Olaf Wormius, actually did a long study on this to find out that it was fake.
Fucking pranked.
Fucking pranked. Okay, so hold on. It gets even worse. Okay, you guys, we've talked about this before. This Elizabethan magician, also the original head of MI5, Sir John Dee.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He allegedly translated the book into English, but Lovecraft wrote that this version was never really printed and only fragments actually survive. Frank Long, the another one of Lovecraft's gay friends, suggested that he didn't know about, but that John Dee and Lovecraft had contact. So according to Lovecraft, the Arabic version was already disappeared by the time the Greek version was banned in 1050. So this is a fake book. It's being like passed around and like read as real, even though it was completely fabricated by this guy who's had both of his parents have had like nervous breakdowns. There was actually a copy appearing in San Francisco that supposedly burned in a great San Francisco fire.
Oh, that's convenient.
Yeah, there was another copy that showed up in Salem, Massachusetts, in 1692, which supposedly burned up in Salem witch trial. According to the history of the Necronomicon, the very act of studying the text is inherently dangerous, as those who attempt to master its arcane knowledge generally meet terrible ends, which is what you said earlier. Anybody who studies it tends to go mad. So, like, that's crazy. Was it the Nameless City? There's this one that is not dead which can eternal lie, and with strange eons even death may die. Which is, from the lines from the Metallica song, "The Thing That Should Not Be." Again, we have metal bands with Lovecraftian lyrics. Well,
that makes sense because so much of the metal philosophy is very counter decadence, and they write about very bleak topics as an expression of this side of life that is oftentimes suppressed.
Right. Yeah. No, totally. That's well. You've got you have Metallica. You have what you said? You said Black Sabbath. Those are two major metal bands talking about this. You have according to the history of the Necronomicon, there are only 5 original copies, which are held in one in the British Museum, one in the Bibliothèque Nationale de France, which is probably overrun by Muslims right now, the Widner Library of Harvard, the University of Buenos Aires, and the Library of Fictional Miskatonic University is also in the fictitious Arkham, Massachusetts. Now, Arkham, Massachusetts, as anybody who is a fan of modern fiction has heard of the Arkham Asylum, which is part of the Batman legend.
Right.
So, this guy was a crazy fucking genius.
Yeah, it's really a shame that he died so young and without having written he died without having really written any full-length books. I think he wrote like one in his lifetime.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of stuff he wrote was just short stories and poems and stuff like that. And he died of cancer, I think it was, in 34, 36, I can't remember. And I know he got like really depressed towards the end of his life because basically he viewed his entire life's work as having been wasted because back then especially, like, there was no central repository for all of his stuff because he would write for, you know, like weird magazines, and he would write for all these different places.
Mm-hmm. He wrote a lot, like I said, he wrote a lot of ghost-written stories and whatever. And
yeah. So basically his stuff is all over the place, you know, and he doesn't have it all organized or anything like that. So he got really depressed towards the end of his life when he was dying of cancer because he basically thought that everything he'd worked on was kind of just gone, you know. It wasn't until after his death, a lot of his friends that he maintained correspondence with, they basically all got together and kind of scrounged up all of his stuff and started publishing it and, you know, centralizing it.
Right. I mean, there's a whole lot of like like alleged translations and hoaxes of like his Necronomicon. You know, I mean, it's such a quote unquote important thing. I mean, even though he even came out and said it's fake. Like it's mythical. It's, you know, it's fiction. It's whatever. But there's, I don't know, a cult of people who believe it or what. I mean, you know, there's the occasional, I don't know. It's crazy that people still claim it's like an extremely powerful and dangerous book. You know, you just can't leave it sitting on a shelf because anyone could read it and then they go crazy and die. Right. But like, you know, like, I hear a voice in the background. Is that sounds like it might even be Death himself.
Could it be?
I don't know.
Very well could be.
Very well could be. Oh shit. All right. Well, we'll have to bring that in. We'll have to bring that in another time. Yeah. But Lovecraft wrote a lot of, like you said, a lot of things that were never finished. He had a lot of what's the word I'm thinking of? Like he came up with these gods like Cthulhu and these other ones that were supposedly from Sumer that weren't real. He just came up with this like canon
like mythos. He came
like a mythos of things that weren't real, like these elder gods that didn't exist and that people still think exist. I mean, to the point where South Park did an episode where they supposedly summoned Cthulhu. You know, and Cthulhu is a phony elder god. You know, like
Yeah. I do think it's funny how I know Adam was saying earlier, talking about how pop culture turns a lot of this stuff into like almost a parody of itself. And Cthulhu, more than anything, especially, you can see that with. Like, Cthulhu goes from, in Lovecraft's work, being this thing that can basically make you go insane from the knowledge of it, right?
Right.
Into basically Godzilla with an octopus head.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Like that's what Cthulhu is after pop culture, you know, had its way with the whole mythos. Is it's Godzilla, but he's got an octopus head instead of a lizard head. Whereas in Lovecraft's books, like, you can't even really like describe it. You just go insane from attempting to even describe what you're seeing.
Right.
So I don't know. I just think it's interesting how pop culture kind of destroys everything it touches.
Well, I kind of like how pop culture sort of picked up things from it, like where they grabbed Arkham, you know, which turned into the Arkham Asylum, which is where all the crazy people go in the Batman stories.
Yeah. That's the name of the publishing company.
Arkham Publishing.
That did you guys talk? Yeah.
We did not. No,
his friends after he died. What?
We did not. Go ahead. So you can go ahead.
Yeah. So after he died, you know, like, he hadn't ever published a book. He only ever really wrote essays or diss songs. Yeah. So his
Flame
buddy
War
August
articles.
Derleth and Donald Wandry, they got some money together and they got all his writings and they started Arkham House Publishing. and they published a hardcover book with a lot of his works in it. And so that's sort of how his legacy was able to really take off, because he was relatively obscure at the time of his life, as is so often with great writers and artists. Nobody cares about them until they're dead.
Well, that's
It's interesting how often that happens.
With that, somebody doesn't gain notoriety until after they die.
Yeah, like, I mean, God, there's like there's so many.
Nietzsche.
Van Gogh, Nietzsche. Like, I don't know what's behind that phenomenon, but I think probably, honestly, the reason that we've even heard of Lovecraft today was because of his friends. Like, I don't think if he didn't develop that network of friends and correspondence, I don't think we would have ever heard of him. He probably would have died and languished in obscurity.
I
Well,
agree with that.
he was living in abject poverty his whole life. The end of it, anyway.
Yeah. Poe is another one like that, and Poe was definitely a huge influence on Lovecraft.
Well, there's a thing with Lovecraft and Poe, and I saw it earlier tonight when we were reading. I can't find it now, but there was like 3 or 4 different phases that he went through, and one of them had kind of an Edgar Allan Poe sort of thing, where they compared him to Poe. And give me a second.
They both wrote about very bleak subjects.
Yeah, they did. They both were
died
like
young. They were both miserable.
There was a lot of
childhoods.
Exactly. There was a lot of ties between him and Poe,
And they were both even from New England as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot. Exactly. There's a lot of ties. So this is his works. The works of Lovecraft are consisting of 3 periods. So an early Poe influence, followed by a Lord Dunsany inspired the Dream Cycle, and then the Cthulhu Mythos stories. So like his earlier works were more like Poe inspired, which I could see based on the way he lived and the way his family, like what happened with his family and his father and his mother and his grandfather and whatever. It was very comparable to what happened to Edgar Allan Poe. So,
Right.
there's that.
Yeah, I think there was an interesting
I didn't know.
distinction.
Go ahead, Adam.
A lot of his, works are about scientists or these other highly educated people encountering weird things happen, and there's not a lot of explanation or background. Leave the color out of space. It's basically just about this weird thing that happened. But it wasn't until
The Color Out of Space is probably my favorite one.
it wasn't until later that he really started expanding on these lore. He created these really complex systems of lore as a way of creating a sort of mystery, leaving little tidbits, bits and pieces, and letting the reader fill in with their imagination the blanks about what these ancient societies must have been like.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about Lovecraft is the fact that he just drops these little breadcrumbs throughout all of his stories, and he doesn't necessarily explain everything about the mythos. He just kind of leaves little, hints, and you kind of have to piece it together by reading all of his stuff. It makes it seem a lot more real that way. If I'm talking about, I don't know, if I reference Korea, right? I'm not going to explain where Korea is, and it's a peninsula in Asia. It's just, it's Korea. And I think
the country of StarCraft.
Yeah. You don't have to give a whole history. And by him just kind of throwing these little breadcrumbs out of, oh, this is Cthulhu, or this is the Necronomicon, I think it was really effective in helping to kind of build his world and build his mythos, because it almost treats it like a real thing that you're just not privy to. Oh, this is a thing that exists, you just happen to not know about it. So I think he's really masterful in world building, especially.
Right. Remember how we were talking about earlier about Lovecraft and his musical influences?
Yeah.
Holy shit. Did I find a treasure trove of this? So we have the psychedelic rock band HP Lovecraft, who shortened their name to Lovecraft in the 70s. They released HP Lovecraft and HP Lovecraft 2 in 67 and 68, which their titles include The White Ship at the Mountains of Madness, both titled after Lovecraft stories. Of course, Metallica, The Call of Cthulhu, another song based on the shadow over Innsmouth titled The Thing That Should Not Be, and another one based on Frank Belknap's song The Hounds of Tilindos titled All Nightmare Long, which I don't know that Metallica song. I thought I knew all the Metallica stuff. But Dream Theater has a song called The Dark Eternal Night based on Nyarlathotep. Nyarlathotep. Black Sabbath's... No, it's Nyarlathotep. Stop it.
Okay,
I got it.
good.
I got it. It's Nyarlathotep. I listened to the pronunciation on Google Pronunciation. It told me. In that year. So
Google knows.
Google knows.
It's like
I did my Googles.
all
I did my
metal bands.
Googles. Yeah. Black Sabbath's Behind the Wall of Sleep, based on Beyond the Wall of Sleep. The Darkest of the Hillside Thickets. Their entire
They kind
repertoire
of
is
lifted the
Lovecraft-based.
name, but the actual like,
Can I read the list?
huh? Okay.
Okay.
No.
You can do your thing. Okay. So there's the band The Black Dahlia Murder. The Throne of Lunacy and Thy Horror Cosmic are both based on the Cthulhu Mythos. Excuse me. The UK anarcho-punk band Rudimentary Peni.
Oh, that sounds gay as hell.
Wow. I'm sorry I said that. But they make repeated references in their song titles and lyrics and artworks to, including the album Cacophony, which are all inspired from the life and writings of Lovecraft. Live After Death from Iron Maiden, the mascot Eddie rises from a grave from the name H.P. Lovecraft. In a quotation from the Nameless City, that is not dead, that which can eternal lie, yet with strange eons even death may die. The German metal group Mekong Delta has an album called Music of Eric Zahn. The band leader and composer Les Baxter provided a melodic electronic influenced score for the movie version of the Dunwich Horror, which proved to be much more appreciated than the film itself, and has been reissued several times, mostly on vinyl. So there's a band called AM, which is Arctic Monkeys. Mentions Lovecraft as one of the authors of the dark culture, along with Edgar Allan Poe, on the song "You're So Dark." Heavy metal band Merciful Fate produced the song "The Mad Arab" Part 1 and "Cthulhu: The Mad Arab" Part 2 on albums "Time" and "Into the Unknown," based on Albu al-Harzed, the Mad Arab who allegedly, created the Necronomicon in the Lovecraftian universe. New Zealand jazz musician Reuben Bradley's 2015 album with Taylor Eagstye and Matt Penman. I don't know how many of those names echo, but they're metal musicians and jazz musicians.
Well,
so I'm
it's
pretty sure
jazz, so a lot of them.
Probably 90% chance it's Taylor Eagstye and Matt Penman. Okay, but Cthulhu Rising programmatically recounts a Lovecraftian story for each of its tracks, so the entire album.
When I think of Lovecraftian horror, jazz is definitely like
yeah, right there, jazz, right. Jazz is like, I don't get jazz. Jazz is this weird music where all of a sudden, like, everybody in the band just stops and they all look at each other like they laugh. Like, dude, I don't.
Yeah, because the joke is the joke is that they're playing a joke on the audience because no one.
Right. I don't get your jazz joke, jazz man.
It's all an in-joke.
It's just Jewish chaos music.
Yeah, so there's a band, Iced Earth, another metal band. Cthulhu appeared on their album Plagues of Babylon. An American death metal band called Cemetery Filth released the song Dagonian Dialect based on Lovecraft's early story Dagon for the Four Doors to Death. The technical death metal band Nile, who I know very well, has recorded many songs inspired by Lovecraft, and I was involved with none of those. The French electronic musician Carpenter Brut His first track off of his album called Escape from Midwich Valley. It's based on Lovecraft's The Shadow over Innsmouth. The Czech black metal band Root has a song called The Old Ones, which, of course, the old gods. Fake old gods, like Cthulhu. Canadian progressive house producer deadmau5. His album 4x4 equals 12 features Cthulhu
You know
Sleeps.
someone's going to freak out when you pronounce it deadmau5. I hope you know that.
I know it's dead mouse. It's dead mouse.
Someone's
dead.
going to say something in the
No.
comments.
It's fucking deadmau5. I don't give a fuck. Like, look, I'm not Canadian, so fuck off. Okay, the UK goth band Killing Miranda has a bunch of songs called Enter the Dragon and Shadow over Innsmouth, Bloodseed and Dreams of the Witch House. They have a track called Discotheque Necronomicon.
What do you think it is about Lovecraft that makes so many bands want to reference him? Do you think it's people just trying to seem like big brain?
It's big brain. It's big brain, edgy. Look at how dark edgy I am. You know. The only thing that bothers me is Nile, because Nile was like into real Egyptology, like Book of the Dead and that kind of stuff, and they went.
Well, Lovecraft definitely has a lot of Egyptian influences too.
Yeah, but kind of depressing though.
Like we were talking earlier about the whole dream thing and like things that make you think of stuff that you don't know if it's real or not. Egypt does that for me, like something fierce, like the Sphinx.
Oh, Egypt is let's do a pyramid like Sphinx sort of episode one of these days.
I know for a fact, like I know I don't even have to look up references. I can do a pyramid one easily.
Okay, good. Let's do that.
Okay.
But we got a few more minutes here before we end up the second hour. Adam, Scott, this was fun. Another fan request. We've been asked to do this, so here we did it. You got your Lovecraft episode.
You know what we should do?
This was fun. I'm glad we did this.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this was great.
We should make a subreddit for the Paranormies.
Ooh.
You guys want to do that?
The reason
Scott,
I say
you're gonna
that-
have to set it up. So I don't know. I don't Reddit. You know I don't.
I know.
I barely
The reason
Facebook.
I say
Like,
that is so we can have all of our fan suggestions in one place, because like
that's a good idea. Actually,
I know people tell us stuff, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds good, and it always does sound good. Like I'm not bullshitting them, but I immediately forget like 2 days later what they said.
dude, are you kidding me? Like, I meet somebody in real life, and I'm like, hi, I'm Johnny. They're like, hi, I'm so and so, and I immediately forget their name. So like, yeah.
Yeah. So
And it's not because I don't like you. It's
have
just
a-
because I only have so much room in my brain.
yeah, we don't have big brains.
Yeah, we're not that big brain niggas.
That's right. We're as big brain as normal brain people get.
We're moderate brain.
That's right. We're moderate brain. All right. So
yeah.
this was fun. I had a good time tonight. We're gonna get out of here. For the right stuff.biz. I am Johnny Monoxide with Scott Taylor and Adam Haidt. We have been the Paranormies present the Ahnenerbe Hour. We will take you out with another creepypasta. We'll see you next week. Later.
Time travel makes
I go to
you
a
gay.
small community college in Arizona.
Lovecraft would know, though.
I've been working on my digital imagery and video production certificate for about 2 semesters now. The college allows me to go in and put in some extra hours of work on my videos before releasing them and displaying them at the small art gallery across from the art department. Not to mention that I also work there after classes as well. Our campus is out on the highway, about 10 miles from my town. Very isolated and gloomy on most days. The college is surrounded by desert and tall mountains. The college decided to move the art building closer to the other classrooms, since we are in a solitary building that takes a while to walk to. They gutted the small building and left the digital photography and video production rooms for last. One night, after I finished my shift at work, I decided to work on one of my videos since it was due the following week. We used some expensive next-gen Mac computers, but I always noticed a small beat-up Mac that hid in the back of one of the closets. Since my supervisor had gone home, I decided to hook the little sucker up and see if there was anything interesting on it. I plugged it in and it took a little while to boot up. Finally, the welcome screen showed up. There were 2 accounts, one that read instructor and the other that read student. I logged into the student account and I skimmed through various student pictures as I noticed that they had the same man in the background. A balding, middle-aged man. His eyes were blue as a picture of the nebula. His grin in every single picture was wide, and his eyes seemed to gaze straight through my soul. At the end of the long list of pictures, I found a .mov file. It was titled crawl.mov. Since it was around 8 at night, I started getting uncomfortable. The name of the file made my heart beat fast. I wanted to watch it, but I knew I was going to regret it. I called my friend to pick me up, since I was 10 miles away from the town and the buses never run so late. I had about 15 minutes before my friend actually arrived to take me home. I clicked on the file and it popped up on QuickTime. My hands were clammy, and my eyes darted to the small window. It faded in slowly with a sort of sad, sorrowful song. Then appeared the title, Crawl, in bold red text. It faded out and quickly cut to a shot in the desert at night. All I could hear were footsteps on gravel, and bushes and weeds being swatted out of someone's way. I began to feel relieved, and assured myself that it was only a student edit. And I laughed as I remembered myself being so scared I couldn't even open the file. I looked down at my phone and checked for any new notifications as the video played. I looked up and stopped as my jaw dropped open. What I saw was gruesome and horrifying. A man covered in blood. And he was exactly the same man in the pictures I had seen just a couple minutes ago. The shot was only his face in the beginning, but soon panned down to reveal him sawing through what looked like a bone. His smile was still painted across his face. The camera zoomed out and there he was, a petite brunette, her eyes wide with fear as the man was sawing through her leg. I cupped my hand over my mouth. I tried to convince myself that the video was just edited. It was all special effects. But it all looked so real. The footage was so raw, and it showed no signs of being played with whatsoever. All there was through the whole video was silence. The look on the girl's face. That face I still see to this day and I can never forget. About 5 minutes passed and it finally cut to black. I leaned back in my chair, thinking to myself, what the fuck did I just see? All of a sudden, I started hearing noises, and the screen was still black, but I remembered I hadn't lowered the volume. Slowly but surely, I started making out little whimpers. It was the girl. I hovered over the time bar and the video was still going. It had about 5 more minutes left. The whimpers grew louder and louder. The black seemed to be growing lighter and lighter, until finally a dirt road came to focus. The girl was thrown into the middle of the road, shivering and twitching. Still alive, both of her legs missing. There was chanting in the background behind the camera. It got louder and louder. Satan is my father. Hell is my home. Over and over again. It was a man's voice. I gritted my teeth as I was growing more nervous by the second. The chanting stopped. Then he began to whistle, like he was trying to get the girl's attention, like a person would whistle at a dog. Then he said, "Come here, girl. Crawl. You can do it. Crawl." The girl looked straight into the camera. Her eyes were bloodshot, distorted. They sure as hell didn't look human to me. She turned herself onto her stomach and lifted her hands above her head, started to pull her body towards the camera. This sinister grin started to grow on her lips. The skin on her face was pale, bruised, and cut up. All you could hear was her body and the dirt below her, slowly making her way closer and closer. She finally reached the foot of the man's feet. She had left behind a trail of blood. She looked up and shrieked. I've never in my life heard such a terrible sound. Sort of like a pig squealing and the sound of a baby crying. I quickly unplugged the computer and put it back in its place. I closed up the room and almost sprinted outside. As I pushed the door to the building open, my friend rolled up into the parking lot and I got in as fast as I could. I hardly spoke on my way home, and I thanked him for the ride. The next morning, I told my supervisor about the video and what I had seen. He laughed, and these were his exact words. Who finally told you that ghost story? I told him I could show him where it was. I pulled the computer out of the closet and plugged it in. I tried the power button, but nothing happened. He proceeded to tell me that the computer had been broken, just sitting there for a couple of years now. He said that the ghost story around the college was about a girl from the dorms that had been kidnapped and dragged out into the desert. Her legs cut off, and she was offered as a sacrifice to Satan by one of the staff members from the ceramics department. He assured me it was just a tale to keep students from the dorms from going out into the desert at night. My supervisor added, some people say they can hear whistling in the desert at night, calling for someone to crawl. Something like, come here, girl. Crawl. You can do it. Crawl. But I think that's just a load of bullshit.